go to the Adjustment Layer menu, you'll see that Shadow Highlight is not an available adjustment layer. That's because it is a destructive adjustment that cannot be modified. However, Photoshop CS3 and the invention of smart filters provides a very interesting workaround. If I go ahead and right-click on this layer, I can convert it to a smart object. Smart objects allow for flexible editing of the image. In this case, we can apply the Shadow Highlight adjustment. And even though this is in the Adjustment menu, it really is just a very complex filter that performs image adjustment techniques. So now, the same dialog box comes up. We can isolate this to the shadows and say that the darkest 40% are shadows. Open them up a little bit. There we go. Actually, let's open that a little bit further. Soften it out. Knock the highlights, this bright area in the streets, down. Let's pull that down so that it's not as intense. There we go. That's better. And soften things a little. I'm going to go ahead and purposefully overcrank the color correction. And without looking, I clicked OK. And then I regained my better senses and realized that I really overdid it. Well, fortunately, in Photoshop CS3, you can now double-click on the shadow highlights here in the Filter Effect name area, and it will reopen, allowing you to back down that color correction to a more normal level and put a little contrast back in. There we go. And click OK. Now, just because you fix the shadow and the highlights doesn't mean that the image is done. This image still has some exposure and color problems, and it will benefit from a levels adjustment layer. We can be lazy and try auto, which did OK. Let's go ahead and reset. Or I can go through and make those individual channel adjustments, pulling this in to where that begins to rise on both ends. There we go. Balance the image in the middle. Go to the green channel, pull this in to where the data begins to rise, and attempt to balance the histogram, treating this like a seesaw or teeter-totter. Put the 2 points on the end of the rise, and then balance it so it would be level. And let's go to the blue channel, and we'll do the same. Pull that in. There we go. And find the balance point. Way too blue. That looks better. Come back to the middle and just open that up a little bit more. Put a little bit of contrast into the blacks, and click OK. Before, after. And that worked pretty well. Now, this image is grainy, and it is not perfect. But if we go back to the original image, you'll see that those two commands essentially rescued an image that would have otherwise been absolutely unusable. So the Shadow Highlight command is very useful. And by combining that with Photoshop CS3's ability to apply it as a smart filter, you get the ability to further refine that effect by double-clicking on it. There we go. And let's put the levels adjustment back on. And there you have it, a fairly nice adjustment. To soften out this grain, I will go ahead in my image and choose Select All. And I will copy a merged copy and paste it. Let's put that at the very top of the stack. We can now apply a gentle Gaussian blur to soften this out a little bit. Let's do a value of about 9. There you go. Set this to a blending mode. Let's try soft light, and we'll back the opacity down. That worked pretty well. We could try overlay, and you'll see the difference. Before, after. Putting that blurred copy on top and adjusting its opacity and blending mode really just acts like a nice soft pro mist filter and removes a little bit of the grain and excessive detail. And there you have it. Combining the Shadow Highlight command with a few other tweaks like adjustment layers and blending modes to take an essentially unusable photo and make it much more usable for our purposes.